the top stories. Viewing begins for the body of the late Richard Keynes. St. Lucia records 31st homicide for the year, and Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe resigns. Hello and welcome to the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Today is Friday, 28th August 2020. I am your presenter, Shaira Flanders. Nationally, family members, government officials and other persons wishing to pay their respects were among those who lined up to view the body of the late Richard Keynes on Friday morning. The viewing was held at the R.L. Keynes building on Princess Street. Among the government ministers present was Deputy Prime Minister the Honorable Sean Richards. ZIZ caught up with Ambassador Vance Amory, who shared some of his memories working with Mr. Keynes.
You would know that I worked as PS Finance in Nevis in 1983 to 86, and at that time Richard was the Junior Minister of Finance. So we had a very close relationship. I see Richard and look back at him as a man for all seasons. He was very solid in what he did, a no-nonsense person. He meant well, and he really was a strong, stalwart force on behalf of St. Kitts and Nevis.
The viewing began at 11 a.m. and will run until 5 p.m. The official funeral of the late Richard Keynes takes place on Saturday at 1 p.m. at Warner Park. In other news, St. Kitts and Nevis's Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris, has extended congratulations to the government and people of India on the attainment of its 74th anniversary of independence. Independence Day in India is celebrated annually on August 15th. It marks the end of British rule in 1947 and the establishment of a free and independent Indian nation. Prime Minister Harris, in a letter to Prime Minister of India, His Excellency Narendra Modi, stated, quote, "Your prudent management of India these past years has enabled your country to continue to withstand the most severe socio-economic consequences of COVID-19, end quote. Dr. Harris continued by saying that he remains proud to consider India a friend of St. Kitts and Nevis, with whom we, quote, can further deepen and strengthen our diplomatic relationship. He said, quote, "The assistance you have provided to the CARICOM region through the India Fund is indicative of your efforts to bolster cooperation and is greatly appreciated," end of quote. And in other news, the borders of St. Kitts and Nevis remain closed to regional and international passengers. However, nationals of the Twin Island Federation are free to return home provided they follow specific procedures and protocols designed to protect against the importation and spread of COVID-19. Chairman of the National COVID-19 Task Force, Abdias Samuel, said that citizens wishing to return should visit the webpage www.covid19.gov.kn/repatriation-form to submit the information that is required. Requested fields include personal details and contact information, emergency contact, residency, travel history, flight information, and others. The completed form can then be uploaded via the site and accessed by the relevant authorities. Links to other pages provide information on COVID-19 protocols, port health surveillance notice of quarantine/isolation form, and quarantine terms and conditions. Ways to protect against the coronavirus are also listed on that page. Chairman Samuel noted that the National Emergency Operations Center, or NEOC, had received emails for repatriation. Quote, "If you make any submissions for repatriation to St. Kitts and Nevis, you will be reverted to the online process on the website," he stated, noting that a response will be received within 48 hours. He said, quote, "I'm appealing to all who are desirous of returning to St. Kitts and Nevis to use these means for repatriation purposes," end of quote. Preparation is taking place to at least reopen the borders with a phased approach in October 2020. We now move to news on the regional scene. St. Lucia has recorded its 31st homicide for the year after an early Thursday morning shooting. It's the third fatal shooting of the week. We hear more in this report.
Another victim of gun violence, this time in the community of Pave, a man identified as Jade, a local vendor selling pastries, was shot in the neighborhood where he was born and raised. Sources reveal a single gunshot to the chest was inflicted upon Jade Rosary, who then made attempts to evade the gun-wielding assailant by running into a neighbor's house for refuge. However, the Pave resident succumbed to his injuries. One eyewitness, Juliet Belizar, spoke to News Force. She says the shooting incident was nothing short of horrific.
I saw some person was in the balcony lying down, like you lie down and your body's dead. And then afterwards, I saw all the clothes, all the outfit the person has a lot of blood. Mr. Matthew, I saw the person outfit has a lot of blood. He said, "What is that?" I said, "I'm not happy. How did the person die or what?"
The resident, still shaken by the sight of the corpse, says she was then informed that the remains were that of the well-known pastry vendor.
The guy is a guy that does be selling dal puri. Now, I didn't know it was him, but it's some person that told me so. So when I get to heard that, I was feeling so sad, because even though the guy is not my family, but I'm still not feeling happy all now.
Other residents were mum, some even quivering at the thought of speaking in whisper tones for fear of reprisal. However, a customer and friend of the deceased, referred to as only Knock, came forward to speak to the memory of the man he knew.
My friend.
Okay, what will you miss most about him?
Pass it and shout me and tell me, hey, hot dal, peach dal, whatever, banana hick. That's what the man was doing.
The 28-year-old Rosary is reportedly survived by a wife. The details surrounding the deadly mid-morning shooting remain sketchy, with no official statement released as of news time by law enforcement. From the community of Pave, Solange Alfred, HTS News Force.
In Guyana on Wednesday, President Irfan Ali hosted an urgent virtual multi-stakeholder meeting at State House to discuss the state of the country and the COVID-19 pandemic in the face of rising cases in the country. Here's more in this report.
At an urgent virtual multi-stakeholder meeting convened by His Excellency Mohammed Irfan Ali on Wednesday at State House, the President said that such discussions are vital to a unified approach on national efforts related to strengthening and advancing the national response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The President further stated that together Guyanese can develop a national COVID-19 response to protect and safeguard all Guyanese. These statements, as well as the emergency multi-stakeholder meeting, come on the heels of the country surpassing the 1,000 mark of positive coronavirus cases, as well as an increase in deaths over the last week. Since the new government took office, the President has not only pledged to secure financing to aid with economic hardships, but has also pledged to undertake mass testing for the virus across the country, which has already begun. With mass testing taking place, the country has recorded a significant increase in the number of positive cases each day. Further, in a more recent address to the nation, His Excellency Irfan Ali had committed to securing some 30,000 face masks and 30 ventilators to be distributed across the country, in addition to funding in the fight against the pandemic. At the multi-stakeholder meeting, participants discussed the need to ensure that there is a balance between the health of the economy and the health and well-being of the citizenry. Stakeholders also examined how to enhance the capacity of the Center for Disease Prevention and Control at Liliendal to function as an isolation facility, as well as the reopening of the Chedijagan International Airport for commercial travel. The President, however, noted that while the reopening of airports for commercial travel is integral to stabilizing and re-energizing the economy, a decision will not be made without considering the safest and most practical model moving forward. Meanwhile, Director of the Civil Aviation Authority, Egbert Field, while speaking with this newscast sometime last week, revealed that plans are still on the way to reopen the Chedijagan International Airport from September 1st, allowing for diplomats, expatriates, and overseas-based Guyanese who wish to return to Guyana for a short period of time priority travel. During the virtual forum, Minister of Health, Dr. Frank Anthony, who was present at the meeting, outlined the current status of the country with regards to testing as well as the number of positive cases. Additionally, PAHO WHO country representative Dr. William Adukro noted the key role of effective monitoring systems in dealing with the pandemic, emphasizing the importance of testing, enforcement, and education. Private sector representatives and members of the media also attended the meeting and were allowed to share their input, which will be incorporated into a coordinated plan moving forward, according to the president. Following the discussions, the president pledged to continue engaging all stakeholders as his government moves toward formalizing a concerted strategy to take the country forward. He also assured that all the concerns raised in the discussions will be examined. Wendell Badri for the HGP Nightly News.
We now move to news on the international scene. Japan's longest-serving prime minister has just announced his resignation. Shinzo Abe said it was a difficult decision to resign from office. With Shinzo Abe's resignation confirmed, Al Jazeera's Priyanka Gupta looks back on his political career.
For most of this century, Shinzo Abe has dominated Japan's politics. He comes from an influential political dynasty. His grandfather was prime minister and his father foreign minister. The conservative politician rose through the ranks of his Liberal Democratic Party and became Japan's youngest prime minister since World War II in 2006. But that stint ended the following year due to ill health. 5 years later, he returned. If his first term was marked by his political inexperience, the second had a renewed focus and agenda. What became known as Abeconomics was a series of ambitious reforms aimed at boosting Japan's struggling economy. His vision of a wealthier, stronger Japan came with a lifelong ambition to amend the country's pacifist constitution, which bars it from hostile acts except in self-defense. Many Japanese oppose those constitutional changes. But he did manage to repeatedly win elections.
As a result of the stability that he brought, the fact that he's won 6 national elections, that has basically been unopposed, and really has shown no sign of losing his power really up until now in his 8th year, that Japan has been well governed, has been predictably and consistently governed for that period, and he has managed to translate that into a much more visible role for Japan in Asia and globally.
Abe strengthened security and trade ties with the US, making Japan one of its closest allies. And despite territorial disputes, he warmed up to regional superpower China. But he stirred controversy by repeatedly visiting the Yasukuni Shrine, which honors Japan's war dead, among them convicted war criminals. And Japan's wartime legacy led to renewed friction with South Korea, causing their worst diplomatic and trade dispute for decades. The 2011 earthquake, tsunami, and Fukushima nuclear disaster was a further test of his leadership. Another came in 2020, when the coronavirus pandemic scuttled his plans to showcase Japan on the world stage by hosting the Tokyo Summer Olympics. The world's third largest economy, already on the slide since 2018, slumped to a record low. But Abe did succeed in being Japan's longest continuously serving prime minister, even as concerns about his health resurfaced. Priyanka Gupta, Al Jazeera.
Still on the international scene, U.S. President Donald Trump has formally accepted the Republican Party's nomination for a second term. He says November's election will be a choice between, quote, saving the American dream or allowing a socialist agenda to destroy it. Al Jazeera's Kimberly Hackett reports.
Never in modern history has a sitting president campaigned from the White House, a political symbol that's supposed to be for all Americans.
I profoundly accept this nomination for President of the United States.
But Donald Trump has again broken with precedent as he accepted the Republican Party's nomination and attacked his Democratic rival, Joe Biden.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
Trump spoke for more than an hour, painting an apocalyptic picture of a Biden presidency. He told voters his opponent was campaigning as a Democrat, but would usher in an ideology much further left than any other liberal candidate.
Your vote will decide whether we protect law-abiding Americans or whether we give free rein to violent anarchists and agitators and criminals who threaten our citizens.
Trump touted what he saw as some of his administration's successes in foreign policy.
I could not sit by as career politicians let other countries take advantage of us on trade, borders, foreign policy, and national defense.
On domestic policy, even as Trump has scored low marks from American voters for his pandemic response, with more than 180,000 Americans dead, Trump argued Biden will not make things better.
Instead of following the science, Joe Biden wants to inflict a painful shutdown on the entire country. His shutdown would inflict unthinkable and lasting harm on our nation's children, families, and citizens of all backgrounds.
As he spoke, more than 1,000 guests, most of them not wearing a mask, sat shoulder to shoulder, ignoring the White House's own social distancing guidelines. Earlier in the day, Democratic vice presidential nominee Kamala Harris hit back, charging Trump didn't do enough in the early days of the pandemic to protect Americans.
All we needed was a competent president, one who was willing to listen, willing to lead, take responsibility, have a plan, do their job.
Harris also accused Trump of stoking racial divisions. Absent from Trump's speech was any mention of Jacob Blake, the man shot in the back last weekend in Wisconsin by a white police officer, even though the incident has caused nights of protests and the shutdown of the country's biggest sports leagues. And in true Trump fashion, his speech and the convention ended literally with a bang. But in an attempt to drown out the festivities, protesters marched through the streets around the White House, demanding justice and vowing to do all they could to prevent Trump's re-election. But Donald Trump is undeterred by the pushback. In an effort to build momentum following his acceptance speech, he's immediately hitting the campaign trail. On Friday, he'll travel to the U.S. state of New Hampshire to hold his first political rally since the Republican National Convention. Kimberly Helkett, Al Jazeera, the White House.
And now for the weather. Present weather is partly cloudy with a slight haze. Winds are moderately blowing in an easterly direction at 16 miles per hour. Seas are reaching 4 to 6 feet. The weather forecast predicts low moisture level along with a subsistent pattern will continue to keep the chances for cloudiness and showers low for the islands over the next 24 hours. Today will be partly cloudy skies with a slight chance of showers. Tonight is expected to be partly cloudy with a slight chance of showers. Sunset today will be at 6:27 p.m. and the sun is expected to rise tomorrow at 5:57 a.m. And that brings us to the end of the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Thank you so much for joining us. Join us for these stories and more this evening. I am your presenter, Shaira Flanders. Have a good one.